Previously, in episode 3, Jinwoo miraculously survived the god-level dungeon, but the most surprising thing was that Jinwoo got a level-up system and no one could see it. It gave him simple daily quests to increase his physical powers, and if Jinwoo fails to complete the task, he would get the penalty of surviving in a desert full of giant worms. So Jinwoo started to complete his daily quest and he received a key to a phantom dungeon as a reward, so he had made up his mind to become powerful and went to the dungeon. Every kill he makes goes into experience for him to level up, but after beating up a few goblins, a high-level wolf shows up to kill him. But Jinwoo had leveled up his agility and strength, so he landed a hit with his fist, but it had nearly no damage to the wolf, and the wolf was darn stronger than him. His dagger was broken. And his bag had nothing but food and water, so right now he needs a weapon to deal with that wolf, so he calls out his inventory and pulls out a sword he got. It kills the wolf. And he remembers the sword belonged to Kim, but the sword was the only weapon he got and it got stuck when other wolves showed up, but thankfully Jinwoo pulled it out before those wolves attacked him. He killed both of the wolf and looking at them, the third one ran off in fear. There the window showed he leveled up this time and Jinwoo realized his battle experience can raise his level unlike his training. Level up gave him 5 points so he puts all of it into his strength, so he stands back up and searched the wolves for some items. It gave him a wolf's fawn, so a new window shows the shop. But his level was insufficient to buy anything, so he sells the wolf fangs, which gives him about 20 golds. He didn't know how much real money that was. But considering it was similar to an E-rank dungeon, Jinwoo guessed that it won't be too much, anyways. The only way to get out of this dungeon was to beat the boss because he doesn't know where to find a teleportation stone. Furthermore, his food supply was down to the ground. So Jinwoo thought he should level up first to pick a fight, and luckily that wolf who ran off brought so many of his friends back with him. But Jinwoo wasn't afraid of it because he had sensed what death feels like, so he fight the wolf horde to level up because he has the responsibility of his mother and sister. He makes up his mind to survive, and Jinwoo goes on and kills the entire horde himself and gains the title of Wolf Slayer, but the only weapon he had was nearing to its breaking point. So Jinwoo thought of stopping now. He received many items and found a teleportation stone to get out of this dungeon, but he knew chance like this won't appear for him soon if he leaves. Because this dungeon was a ticket for him to become stronger, so it was a decision for him to play it safe or risk his life to become powerful by moving forward. And Jinwoo chose to take the dangerous path. He goes on killing one after another monster to level up, and with that he learns that names that display in white are weaker monsters. Orange names suggest Jin is on equal footing, and red means death. The wolves had turned white, that means Jinwoo had become stronger, but even at his current level, he got chills down his spine from his instinct he got about the monster on the lower level. He can feel it's dangerous. But Jin had leveled up to 15 and there wasn't any monster worth killing on that floor to level up, but his sword was nearing its breaking point. Still he made up his mind and went down to the lower level. That subway was the home of the boss, and just one attack from it and his sword broke up. It was the Great Serpent. And his name was in orange, which means Jin is on the same level as him, but the snake was covered in hard armor scales perfect to defend against sword attacks, so when Jin takes its one chance, his half-sword wasn't much useful to penetrate its scale, so Jinwoo had to fight a tough fight and he was barely dodging its attack. Snake even threw off that whole train at him and Jin had no option but to dodge. His power wasn't enough, and he was called the weakest hunter in human history. But only Chi-Yul believed in him. He was getting beaten to a bloody pulp, but Jin had reached his limit from being mocked for being useless and weakest. He knows the feeling of being weak where he gets looked down and played like a toy for being weak, so he wants nothing else but to be strong enough and jumps on the snake. He was thrown off like a pebble, but that just awakened the will of the god inside of him, because he had gone through even worse situation than this. He let go of his blade and grabbed the snake. His strong grips cracked its scales and the snake started to go wild from the pain, so Jinwoo strangled the snake with bare hands to its death. And finally Jin killed the boss and leveled up quite a bit from it. That gave him a venom dagger made out of the snake's bones and it had paralysis and drain effects. Plus Jin even received the poison as a reward, so now that the boss was beat, the dungeon reverted back to a subway. But when Jinwoo was battling in that phantom dungeon, the gate that was opened in the road broke up and the dungeon break occurred. So the Hunter Association called Juhi because she was in B-rank healer. She remembered Jinwoo was trying his hardest even though he went through that same trauma, so she accepted the job. So when the hunter were dealing with the monsters in the city, Jinwoo gets out of the subway and saw the whole area was empty. That's where a soldier gets there and sees a blade in Jin's hand and realizes he's a hunter, so he leads the way to show him where the hunters were. And Jin realized a dungeon break happened while he was in that phantom dungeon. His recent fights had leveled up his senses and he could even tell from a distance there's a dungeon boss on loose. And many hunters were trying to fight the boss but they were unable to break its defenses. All the hunters were too low-rank hunters, but among them was Juhi. But she was still horrified from that god-level dungeon that she couldn't even concentrate to use her powers, so Jin knew it's way weaker boss than the serpent. So he threw his broken sword with his full power and broke its defenses, and the rest was handled by the hunters, but there. A tank was sharp enough to notice that someone broke the defense of the boss with that broken sword he threw, so he asked the soldier, but when he told them about Jin, he had disappeared. Jin had started to glow up and Juhi saw him. But unfortunately, our episode 4 ends right there, but stay tuned to watch another episode of Solo Leveling on my channel. Until then, take care.